Good morning. If you think Joe Biden is the worst president in the history of America, you've joined Mark's Market Overview and Trading Research, and we welcome you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 2nd of July. I'm born to be free. That's your professor and mentor, Mark Petrino. Good morning, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's almost. I mean, you know, it's like everyone's talking about Biden and the debate and everything and this and that, and it's like, oh, he prepped too hard and blah blah. What if there's a friggin' crisis?
Well, and then
Like
they came out and said he's good between 10 and 4. So if he's only good for 6 hours a day, that's really not good for us either.
I mean, it just shows you what a disgraceful person he is. Because if he had any kind of integrity, he would have stepped aside a long time. If he had any kind of integrity, he never even would have ran for president.
Well,
Because
the other part of it
because
is
he knows all this stuff with all this Hunter Biden stuff and all these payoffs was going to. There's a good chance it was going to come out, but he doesn't care. He was like, all right, well, whatever, man. I was in office for 50 years. It's my turn. I'm going to take it. I don't care what happens to the country.
and the other
Well,
part of
even this moron Carl Bernstein is coming out against him now.
Listen, the reason he can't quit, Mark, is because they cannot transfer the war chest that he has in his campaign. Campaign finance laws don't allow that to be transferred to a different candidate. So anybody that's donated to him would have to donate to the new person too. So that's just an impossibility at this point.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
No, not at all.
This guy needs a haircut. Let's see. Bernstein, da 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 da. Wow. So even even Bernstein is turning against him. Democratic donors give Biden a 2-week grace period for polls to fall after debate. It's just sad, man. It's just sad. I mean, this guy was literally talking about like in-laws rape girls.
Oh, I know.
Anyway,
I know that was strange.
It is what it is, I guess, as they say. Well, I saw someone who was a doctor say that the reason why he needed 8 days of prep was because they needed to try to get his medications right. Some of that,
Yeah.
So obviously, when the debate came around, they did something wrong. So anyway, it's very just it's not really a Republican or a Democrat thing. It's really just an American thing, and it's really it's disgraceful, man. It really is. It's disgraceful.
Listen, what they did wrong was to think that.
No, just to think that this guy occupies the same office that these great men like like James Madison and George Washington did, and now you got this moron in the same office. It's just really sad.
Yeah,
but anyway,
absolutely.
Whatever.
Pumping him up with dope is the problem.
It's not that he's too old, man. He's just stupid. He was stupid when he was young.
He's crooked.
Yeah, he's totally crooked, and that's all going to come out too in the Hunter tax trial, because now it's going to be all proof that all these transfers and everything were illegal, and he's getting money from our enemies, basically.
Did you see the TLT this morning?
Hunter Biden was getting paid more money for being on the board of Burisma than people that are on the board of directors of ExxonMobil get. So that should tell you something right there. All right, let's go. Speaking of ExxonMobil, let's go see what's going on in that part of the market.
TLT got down to 89 yesterday.
I was looking at this Micron. This looks really weak. You got a couple things going on here. So let's check this out. I just think that this is kind of an interesting chart, so we're going to look at this. Let's see here. Alrighty, so let's move to. All right, so you got a couple things going on here. This is a pretty interesting chart. So first of all, you got your classic up here, your classic outside reversal day, right? Or your bearish engulfing pattern, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. In candlestick world, it's called engulfing pattern. In Western world, it's called an outside reversal day. But anyway, let's just look at this for a minute. See, it looked like it was going to open higher, but by the close, the sellers had pushed it all the way back down to here. All right. So there's your one first reversal pattern, right? So that's a bearish pattern. Then here you get your classic flag pattern. And a flag pattern is what we call a continuation pattern as opposed to a reversal pattern. Basically, it means that whatever the trend is going to continue. So what happens is the people that are selling in this case decide, this thing has really got knocked down here. Maybe it's overdone. You know what? Let me pull out of the market for a few days, and maybe the price will rally back, and I'll be able to sell it at a better price. And as a sign of that is the drop off in the volume. So see how here the volume is like so low. So it's basically the people that are selling are taking a break. But then when they see, all right, well, it's not really going to pop back higher here, I'm going to get back in and I'm going to start selling. Then here you have what we would call a breakaway gap. So you got like three classic negative patterns here, all kind of right in a line. Where are we in the pre-market? Down about $1. I would say that this thing gets to 125. Right down here, around here, former bottom. And yeah, all right, so that's that. Let's look at TLT. Wow, that's pretty. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, that's a really big move. I mean, if you look at this thing, this is the bond ETF that we look at. It's like a benchmark. Yeah, this thing doesn't really trade like that. So this tells us that, well, I guess the bond market is expecting inflation.
I don't know how we couldn't have expected inflation to begin with. I think the presidential thing has changed so dramatically that they now have to really have to stop with the pumping of the economy and put the brakes on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be raising rates.
Frankly. They should have raised rates a long time ago.
That's what I think.
So the Red Book comes out at 9 o'clock, and then Powell has got a speech today at 10 or 9:30, excuse me, and then Jolts comes out at 10.
Powell. It's the amazing thing about this whole administration is you could be so wrong and like no one gets fired,
Yeah.
I mean, Lord Austin, the guy who's the friggin' head of the military, disappears for a week. No one knows where he is. He doesn't get fired.
And that's such a critical job.
All right, so let's take a real close look here at the S&P. Down about 40 basis points this morning. So trading right down around here. So we could be having a little bit of a rolling over here. Well, let's look at the technology sector. Let's see what's going on over there. Yeah, tech sector is kind of going sideways. NVIDIA's kind of like lost some of its steam here. It's basically done nothing for the last 6 days, 5 days.
Hey, take a look at SWKS, Skyworks Solutions. That's an interesting chart.
Okay. SWKS. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. What strikes me, like right away, just looking at it, is look at where we hit resistance here.
Mm-hmm.
There's your gap down, and then there's a lot of times this happens. This is a market principle. You gap down, so you close here and you open here. There's no trading in the prices that we gap through. So after a while, when the market turns and comes back to those price levels going in the opposite direction, we tend to move really fast because you don't have this big cluster of these remorseful buyers who are trying to sell to get out at break even. So when the buyers come in the market, they have to reach around and they have to look for sellers, and in order to draw the sellers off of the sidelines, they need to be willing to pay higher prices or to pay premiums. So we see this all the time in the markets. If you gap or you make a fast move going one way, and then eventually the shares turn around and get back to those same price levels going the other way, you tend to move really quickly through them. So we see this all the time. Also, what you can see here is, where did this top form? Well, right at this bottom. So this is an example of finding resistance at a level that had been support. And then, of course, we get up to here, the level that was resistance before, and we find resistance again. And that's because you get the people who bought up here regret doing so when the price falls, and they tell themselves, if this ever gets back up to my price, I'm going to get out at break even. So remorseful buyers from the level that was previously resistance can keep the resistance intact. And that's what happened here. So a bunch of interesting things going on here. But the way I look at it is that like every chart is a lesson, because you're just seeing the same principles and the same dynamics in charts of different things, because we're really just looking at the people that are trading it. Whether it's a crypto or a bond, whatever, people have the same emotions. Now look at this Procter and Gamble. So we got this big sell-off yesterday, and I didn't even notice this because I didn't even look at the market.
Wow. Yeah.
Family stuff I was doing, and so I probably put this black line in here. I don't know, maybe back here. And anyway, look where we found a bottom yesterday after this big sell-off. Right at this particular price level that I had this line at for whatever reason. I don't even remember putting it here, but it just goes to show you how this stuff works. You tend to get support at levels that were resistance before. So resistance here became support over here, and then support here. People sell, and then when the price goes higher, a lot of the people who sell say, I shouldn't have sold. I made a mistake. If it ever gets back to my level, I'm going to buy my shares back. So remorseful sellers placing buy orders at the level that had been resistance can turn resistance into support. And that's what happened here. Another interesting chart I saw, which I don't think I would buy because it's an immoral company as far as I'm concerned. But this Nike had this big move down, and this could be a type of a capitulation here. Look at how big the volume was.
Yeah.
It's the biggest volume it's had in, gosh, who the hell knows? Ever, maybe? At least in the last 5 years. So anyway, so the way that something like this happens is you get people that want to sell, and they basically get sick of watching the thing go lower and lower and lower, and then they finally just throw in the towel and say, I'm just going to go sell. I don't care what price I get. I just want to get out. So the sellers basically get washed out. So now if people start to say, that Nike news was bad, but it's really not as bad as most people think. Excuse me. I'm going to go in and buy. Well, they're going to have a hard time finding sellers because the sellers are pretty much all done. So they're going to have to be forced to pay up to get sellers interested. And that's what drives the price higher. In other words, they might come into the market and the last trade might be 78 and they want to buy 50,000 shares, but maybe you can't do it at 78. Maybe you got to pay 79 or you got to pay 80 because there's not a lot of sellers around. So there's a good chance that this here makes a decent move here and refills the gap.
Man, I went shoe shopping the other day, and they have some of the ugliest shoes now. They used to have very nice looking shoes, but Nike shoes are they're stupid looking. They're just not good shoes. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Can you get a little look at the T triple Qs for Lamar? He wants to give him some insight on what's going to happen today with it, or the Qs, period.
Well, let's see. Down about 50 basis points in the pre-market. I mean, it looks pretty neutral to me. I don't really see much happening here. But let's look at some of the big tech stocks that are in it. So let's see what Microsoft. So Microsoft got pretty weak, but then it reversed and had a good day. Now this is another thing with these lines, right? And I remember talking about this yesterday, where we had said that I want to take a short position on it, unless it got below this level right here, all right, the former bottom. So the former bottom here is 445.70. Yesterday's low trade was 445.66. So we never really broke this level. So I was wrong because I thought that this sell-off was going to continue, but I wouldn't have taken a position unless we got below here, which we didn't. So this is why this is a good example of why it's important, especially in the short term, to know where these different price levels are, because opens and the closes is where most volume trades. So the opens and the closes of prior days, there tends to be support or resistance. I mean, not always, but sometimes. So the fact that we never got below here would have prevented me from getting into it. So this is down a little bit here. Down about 30 basis points. So this looks kind of flat. Let's see what Apple looks like. It's not surprising though, because going into the 4th of July, we're in the summer now. Things kind of slow down a lot of times in July and August because people go away and so forth. All right, so Apple, we just want to keep an eye on this here, but this looks pretty neutral as well. So I don't think unless some kind of news comes out, I don't think the Qs are going to really move that much today.
Excellent. Is that good, Lamar? Give you a little bit more insight? I hope so.
So here's the Qs, right? Let's see what the QE looks like.
Yeah, this has been pretty interesting, these videos.
Yeah, so this is the Nasdaq 100 where it's equally weighted. Every 100 of the stocks is the same percentage, and this has got to this resistance, kind of sell off a little bit. Now, if we look at the regular Qs that are market cap weighted, look at the difference. And what this shows you is that money is flowing in, or has been flowing into the big stocks. I think I heard someone say yesterday on the radio, I believe, that yesterday, let's see, so the S&P was up a little bit, that twice as many stocks were down as were up yesterday. So I don't know where they get that from. It's probably relatively easy to find, but it just shows you that there's like the way that these benchmarks are constructed, or these indices are constructed, sometimes it kind of masks the weakness, because theoretically in the S&P 500 you could have 450 stocks going down and 50 of them going up, and if it's the biggest 50, the benchmark in and of itself will go up, but it's kind of masking the underlying weakness. It's I guess the analogy people tend to use, it's like, pretend it's like soldiers, right? Moving forward, like you want everyone kind of to move forward at the same time. If you only have like your 5 or 6 biggest soldiers moving forward and then everyone else is running away or running backwards, well, that's a sign that the market's probably going to turn pretty soon. But I would say, like I've been saying, we just got to keep an eye on Microsoft and Apple. As long as these guys are holding up, the market should be okay. But if we really start to see some turning here, then that would be bad for the broader market. All right, what else did I look at? Carnival, I've got written on my list here.
Oh, and if you would look at international brokers for DAI.
What's that, IBKR?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a pretty decent move here.
Yeah, they did. It's probably everybody leaving Charles Schwab.
You think so?
I do. I mean, I want to leave Charles Schwab, but I've got stock that I'm holding on to. Good morning.
They've had a lot of problems, I guess.
Yeah. Gooley wants to know if you still consider this a narrow market right now, Mark.
Yes, I do.
And
that's what we see if we see like the Qs. It's like if you look here, right? Let me just kind of go over this again. This is all 100 stocks are equally weighted, and it doesn't look that good. I mean, it got to resistance, and now we're kind of trending lower. Here we have the stocks by market cap, and it looks very different, and that's because here things like Nvidia and Microsoft and Apple they dominate this benchmark, so they could be moving up, but most of the stocks in it could be moving down. The number that you see on the screen is still going to go up because that's just the way these things work. And look at it this way. Let me just put it in simple math here. Let's say we have an index or an ETF, and one position is 51% of it, and it's moving higher. And then 100 positions are the remaining 49, right? So you got one stock that's 51%, and then you got 100 that add up to be 49%. Well, if that one stock is moving higher, it's going to make the benchmark, or it's going to make the indice move up, even though the 49% of all the other stocks could be going down. So that's what we look at when we look here. You can look at the S&P 500 too. This is the equal weighted S&P 500. Wow, this is kind of interesting.
Wow, yeah.
So this shows you that, the market is so in this, every stock is the same weighting. All 500 are the same weighting. And look at how weak this looks. And we're even looking like we're setting up here for our descending triangle pattern. Now,
Yeah.
and then if we look at the regular S&P 500, where you got 3 or 4 stocks or 20% of it, look at the difference. So that's market weighted, and that's equal weighted. And look at the difference. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So what this tells me is that most parts of the market are not doing so well. It's just the tech that's been holding things up. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Let's go back to IBKR.
Yeah, IBKR, and then Steve would like you to look at Boeing. Boeing got charged. They're going to put criminal prosecution against Boeing for the deaths I'm not sure if it's for the death of the people or the lack of internal governance. And then they're going to put an auditor general over the top of them to make sure that the company is run correctly.
Good.
Yeah,
Some people should go to jail.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Seems like every day there's like, maybe the media is just following Boeing really closely, but it seems like every day there's like a different incident with some kind of Boeing plane out there.
Well, when the
So
wheels fall off of
IBKR,
them, man.
it's moving up ahead. I would suspect there's probably going to be a little bit of resistance around here. This is 128.60, just the former top. So just remember, there are people who bought up here who now regret doing so because the price is lower. And a lot of them are saying, if it gets back up to my price, I'm going to get out at break even. So this is why we tend to find resistance at former tops. It's amazing, though. The stock has really held up well.
Especially when they stranded 2 astronauts in space, too. I mean, damn.
I saw there was actually something
They're still not down.
in the New York Post this morning about Boeing. Oh, man, you see this Hurricane Beryl? The earliest Category 5 storm on record.
Yeah, it wiped those people out yesterday. Mary's got a good question for you. I believe I know it, but answer that if you would. What's the difference between the Qs and the SPY?
Well, the Qs is the NASDAQ 100, and the SPY is the S&P 500. So they're two different benchmarks. The Qs tends to be more technology oriented. If we can actually look and see, so here are the holdings of the S&P 500, and you see what I mean. There's 500 stocks in here, and Microsoft, Apple, and Nvidia together are about 23%. So you got these 3 stocks are over 20% of a 500 stock index. So they really dominate. If we look at that RSP, which we just looked at, every stock has the same weighting, and that's why it looks so different. Let's look at the Q's weightings.
Good morning, Brandon.
All right, so let's see. Invesco Q's ETFs. Holdings. All right, so now if we look at here, This is the biggest 100 companies in the NASDAQ that's not financial companies. So look at the holdings here. And then if we look at the S&P, we can see the holdings here. The S&P is really considered the most important benchmark in the institutional investment community. Because when you're managing money, right, you need to be compared to something. You can't just say to someone, all right, here's some money, manage it, because you don't know if they've done a good job or not. If your benchmark, or if you're being judged against the S&P 500 and the S&P 500 is up 10% and your portfolio is up 8%, you're doing a bad job. If your portfolio is up 12%, well, then you're doing a good job. So the Qs was just be more like the technology oriented ETF.
I doubt Russia would assist at this point, Steve.
Assist for what?
I'm talking about going to get the people from this International Space Station.
Oh, really? They're really stranded up there?
You didn't know that, dude? They've been stuck there for like 2 weeks and they can't get the Boeing craft to come back the right way. It's having all kinds of technical issues.
Wow. That's pretty. That's why I would never be an astronaut, you know?
They kind of plan for those things, I believe. Die. Would the weather impact the performance of certain stocks like Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting question. In the longer run, I don't know if it would really be an impact, because you got to just ask yourself, all right, well, if there's a hurricane and we can't sail for 3 days, how much is that really going to hurt the bottom line? But the perception is really what drives things. So yeah, I would say absolutely that like bad weather could affect something like that. So Berlin. So how far is this thing from Florida?
what's that? The International Space Station?
No, the hurricane.
Oh, it's in the lower of the Caribbean. It's supposed to. It'll probably hit Mexico. It came in
Oh,
at
okay.
Turks
So
and
you don't
Caicos.
have to worry about it
Yeah,
down
no,
there.
no, no, not at all. Listen, we like hurricanes down here, man. We have hurricane parties when it comes down. All you gotta do is just batten down the hatches and watch the weather, which is really kind of neat. I mean, you see some crazy things. Yeah, Mary, they do have the top three are the same in the spies and the Qs, and that happens when they do rebalancing, and it depends on the strength of those companies.
Wow, look at this turn in let's see if this is this weather related. So
Yeah, they
there's
mentioned it twice, 3 times in there. The hurricane.
yeah, I just don't like losing my power. We have a generator though, but up here when Hurricane Sandy came around, my area didn't have power for 9 days.
Dude, I lost it for 31 time.
You don't have a generator?
Not then. That was when Hurricane Francis, Ivan, and Charlie, and what was the other one? When they all four came through in '04, generators really kind of weren't that big of a thing. Only a few people had them. And then I was living in a neighborhood, and me and one guy were on the same switch, same power lockout for the power company, and they couldn't find us. There was so much devastation there for a while that they couldn't find that we were out of power. So it was. I had bathtubs filled up with water. I'd go get buckets and bring it in and clean it out. And, it was just a mess. It was an absolute mess.
Yeah,
But it teaches you how to live.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, look at this carnival. So this is kind of interesting too, right? We get this massive turn, and where do we find support? Right? Where was yesterday's low trade? Like right here in 1746, and where was the opening trade here? 1745. So that's not a coincidence that we found literally within a penny or a couple
Yes, it
pennies
was.
of this former peak.
Yes, it was, Gene. It was
What's that?
Hurricane Gene. It was Hurricane Gene. Was the fourth one.
Let's see what
That's funny.
Royal Caribbean looks like. Yeah, this is. I would think that this is probably storm related, if I had to guess. So there's Royal Caribbean, there's Carnival Cruise. What are some of the other ones?
When you live with it, Ghoulie, when you live with it, you kind of just know that it's going to happen. We call them blows, and it's really not that. It's scary as hell, but you just trim up your trees and you just ride it out.
Yeah. So there's RCL. Yeah, that's probably weather related. I don't know if it would really affect the airlines. Yeah, see, it's not really doing much with the airline stocks. But anyway, yeah, that's a good question. All right, what do we got to look at now? I guess we'll look at some of our energy stuff here. Yeah, we're probably due for a big hurricane up here sooner or later.
When you
Yeah,
get them, man, I tell
look
you,
at
you
this
guys get
oil.
those. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you guys get those nor'easters, man. That weather coming in from the northeast is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty safe around here, though. We don't really, we don't really get tornadoes or fires, or not like out in California. So look at this. So oil, we've been talking about oil making a move higher, and it looks like it really kind of did yesterday. Was up about 2.4% yesterday. So I would suspect that this will continue to move a little bit, and we'll probably run into resistance like right around here. Now, for a trade, if you're not a futures trader, you can get exposure with the USO ETF. This thing is designed to track the price of oil. So not perfect, but it's good enough for our purposes. Now, you may notice that, well, see, it's trading in the pre-market up here. Oil is open basically 24/7, and this only trades during trading hours in New York. So the charts aren't going to be exactly the same, but this would be a place where you can get exposure. So if oil gets up to here and starts to roll over, then you could go buy puts for USO. Let's see what natural gas looks like here.
Oh, it was brutal yesterday.
Yeah, look at that. So this looks like it's starting to. It looks like it's breaking the support here. So this could make a fairly decent move. Although I don't know how if this would be affected by the weather, but probably not, right? But I would say if I was to take a short position here, my target would probably be down around there. So you would take the position. You could say, all right, well, my initial stop out would be if it rallies back above 250. Say it gets to 255. Then it's like, all right, well, then I just close out my position and I take a small loss. My target for a profit would be down around here. I would call it like, say, 220. And if it starts to head lower and you start to make money, then you have to think about what's your trailing stop strategy. What would have to happen for you to close out your position? And you could just do something even as simple as like a trend line. All right. Well, as long as it's below this trend line, I'm going to keep my short position. If it reverses and we break back through there, well, that's where I take my trailing stop out and I keep some profit on the table. So that's where I would be looking there. Sorry if I missed anyone's questions. I just have a hard time seeing. It really sucks.
I need to get you some glasses, man. Is it cataracts,
All
Mark, or
right.
glasses?
What's that?
Is it cataracts or is it glasses?
Yeah, no, I have cataracts.
Uh,
So, yeah, the eye doctor was like, yeah, you're probably because I've just spent so much time outside in the sun. But my eye doctor was like, everyone, if you live long enough, you're going to get cataracts and eventually you'll get them taken out. But she said the good thing about getting them when you're younger is you'll get the surgery when you're younger. So,
that's true. You heal faster.
yeah. All right, let's see what else we got. Tesla reporting quarterly sales numbers. Let's see what Tesla is doing. Oh, wow, look at that. So we're overbought here. Probably I would be thinking about this for a reversal. See this former peak here? This red line was the bottom and the top. I'm going to say that's about 205. So I would be watching this for a reversal. Maybe if it gets to below 205, maybe if it gets down to like say 203, that's where you jump in. Because just because it's overbought and it's at resistance doesn't mean it can't keep going up. That's why we want to wait for the reversal to actually start before we, before we get involved. It's you're not going to get the exact top or the exact bottom, but it could stack the odds in your favor. There's an old saying on Wall Street that the only people that get the bottom and the top are liars. It can't be done, man. You just can't do it. So you got to remember, we're here to make money. We're not really here to be precise and exact. So the only thing that matters is your account growing in value? Period. Doesn't matter if you get the top. It doesn't matter if you get the bottom. I've seen a lot of people get run over because they just want to try to catch the bottom. I think it's a much better strategy to actually wait for the reversal to start. And you know what? We talked about Weyerhaeuser actually. Now I said, gee, this potentially could be a reversal because we got down to this really clear support level. A lot of times you get support at former support levels, and this has to do with our psychology. You get the people who sold and then they regret selling when the price moves higher, and they say, I made a mistake. If it ever gets back to my price, I'm going to buy my shares back. The next thing that could happen when you get to support is some of the buyers who create the support start to get concerned that they're going to miss out. They know that the sellers are going to go to whoever's willing to pay the highest price. So someone might say, I had my bid at 28.5, but I'm going to go up to 28.60 because I don't want to miss out. And someone else is like, oh, that person went to 28.60. Well, I don't want to miss out. I'm going to go to 28.70, and so forth and so on. So a lot of times when you get to support, you rally. So I was watching Weyerhaeuser for a potential bounce, and I have this trend line here. And I said, all right, well, a potential way to get a trigger to get into this trade would be if we break this downtrend line. So look what happened. It didn't bounce, but we never would have gotten into it because it didn't break the trend line. If you just said to yourself, all right, well, we're at a bottom, I'm going to just go buy it. I guess that's kind of a semi-educated guess, but it's still just a guess. If you wait for the reversal to start and buy it on the way up, well, you're not going to get the exact bottom price, but the odds are going to be probably more in your favor than if you just guess and try to catch the bottom. So what we want to do when we want to look at a trading model is a lot of trading models have a couple different parts. And one would be the setup. And that's like if you're at a race and the starter's like, on your mark, get ready, get set, but they don't say go yet. So the setup is like, okay, we're really oversold and we're at a level that had been support. So that means there's a decent chance that we rally. The trigger, the go, when the starter says go, would be, all right, when we cross this trend line. So it never happened. So we wouldn't have gotten run over here. So this just shows you a good example of having your trigger. So you got your setup, you got your trigger, and then you want to have your exit strategy. So now let's just say that we were going to take this on the short side. Broke support, looks like it can keep going. In terms of what your target would be, I don't really see anything that really sticks out. But let's just say hypothetically, you go short here around 27 and you say, all right, well, my target's going to be 24. If it gets to 24, that's where I get out. So that's your target for a profit. Your initial stop out, meaning this doesn't look like it's going to work out. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me get out of here with just a small loss. So that could be if you get back above this important level here. So this is, we're going to say 28.25. So you enter the trade because we broke the support, right? The setup is we're at support, and now we thought we might have a reversal, but we didn't. Now it looks like it actually might continue to go lower. So you take the short position here and you say, all right, well, my initial stop out is if we get back above 28.25, I'm going to just close out and I'm going to just take a small loss and move on. As it starts to move lower, if it starts to move lower, and now you start to have a profit on the table, you have to say to yourself, all right, what is my trailing stop strategy? I think the most popular trailing stop strategies are a percentage. Like, all right, if this thing turns around by 3%, that's where I'm going to close out. Some people use points if this turns around by 2 points. Like, in other words, you take a short position at 20, let's just say 28, meaning you buy puts when the stock's at 28. And then it gets to, say, 27. You can say, all right, well, if this reverses by 50 cents, that's where I'm going to get out. So if it reverses and it gets back up to 27.50, you would get stopped out, but you would still have a little bit of a profit on the table. And that's the thing about the trailing stop, is that it allows you to potentially be wrong, but you can still make money. In other words, let's just say you stay in this and your target is 24. All right. And it comes down, it comes down, it comes down, it comes down, gets to say 25.50, and then it breaks the trend line. And maybe that's going to be the first sign that it starts to go up. Well, you were wrong about your target because it didn't get to 24, but because of your trailing stop, you would still have some profit on the table. So very important. People think about, like, people love talking about, like, oh, I just bought this stock, or I just bought this. And it's like, oh, it's like you got a new friend, right? It's like, it's exciting. How often do you hear people talk about what their exit strategies are? And I think knowing how to exit a position is even more important than knowing what to buy. If you just took a random 100 stocks, just take a random 100 stocks and have a good trailing strategy and a good target, you could end up being profitable. Like, you could take 100 stocks and say, all right, if one of these stocks reverses by 1%, I'm gonna exit for a small loss, and if it makes a 3% profit, that's where I'm going to take my gain. All right. So just random stocks with a good exit strategy could end up being profitable.
On that note, if you like the stream, subscribe, like, share, because that's really important to us. Thank you.
Yes. So Tesla, I think Tesla is probably going to go lower, but then again, it does have some news coming out. But just looking at the stock here, it just looks overbought.
There you go.
So my strategy here would be, if we get back below this red line here, that's where I would jump in, because it still might keep going higher. But you could say, all right, well, it's at 206. This red line is 205. If it gets to say 202, that's when I jump in. So forget about trying to get the exact top. We just want to wait for the momentum to kind of start going in our direction, and then we jump in. I just think from a risk reward point of view, that just makes a lot more sense than just guessing.
Bitcoin, Mark?
Bitcoin. Yeah, and here's the same thing that we see in other securities, and that's because we're just looking at the people that are trading Bitcoin. Forget about Bitcoin. Just think about the people that are trading it. And we see these same things, right? We found support at a former support level here. We're found support at a former support level over here. Find resistance at a former resistance level up here. Find support at a former resistance level here. So anyway, Bitcoin looks very not really doing anything today. It's basically unchanged. But it is kind of interesting, though, to just see where these price levels are. If you know where the important price levels are, it just makes your life so much easier, because you're not guessing. Like, look up here. Say someone buys Bitcoin and they say, oh, I bought Bitcoin. If it gets to 72,000, I'm going to sell it. Well, you're just guessing it's going to get there, and maybe it does. And maybe it does get to this resistance and break it and keep moving higher. But there's a good chance we get to resistance and then we roll over like we did here. All right. So instead of saying, all right, well, I'll sell it if it goes to 72,000, the person who's letting the market would tell them what to do and say, all right, well, if it gets to 71.5, that's where I'm going to sell. Because maybe it breaks the resistance and gets to 72,000, but there's a really good chance that it gets to 71.5 and rolls over again. Remember, you got people who bought back here who have been waiting ever since to try to get out at break even. If the thing finally one day comes all the way back and gets up there, you're going to have these remorseful buyers trying to sell. we can see here resistance at a former resistance level, and that's why it's all about the psychology. Um,
Absolutely.
boy, I really need a new set of contact lenses. All right, let's just see. Let's go look at the Wall Street Journal, see if there's anything of importance.
Hey, you know what I saw yesterday, Mark? I was reading an article about a French newspaper found that Vladimir Zelensky's wife just put down, she just paid $4.5 million for a Bugatti Tourbillon. So it's a brand new car that she just bought. It's going to be available in a year. It's going to take them a year to build it for her. But I honestly think we should be able to write the Zelenskys off on our taxes.
It just seems so, just the
Outlandish
people
that
that are
they do
running
this
the
shit.
show are just so clueless. They told us, oh, this is going to be a half an hour, it was going to be over in a week. And what's it been now, like 2.5 years?
Yeah, it's been a while. And Steve would like you to look at gold and silver before we take off.
Okay. I mean, it's just like endless. It's like, it's like, I mean, I don't want to sound like an ass or anything, but frankly, I whether Russia runs Ukraine or not is really not high on my list of things to worry about.
It's very irrelevant to life.
You know what I mean? So, these people have hatred for each other that we can't understand because it goes back generations, like when Russia tried to starve the Ukraine, Stalin, and I think they call it the what do they call it, like the Holodomor or something like that, was when, like, all these millions of Ukrainians starved to death.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean,
Stalin
we
carved
can't
them out.
understand it, and I don't understand why we always got to get involved everywhere. But whatever, that's just the military-industrial complex, I guess. All right, so gold is basically not doing anything here, but look at the support here. So see support at a former support level, just like we've seen with pretty much anything we look at, and then silver futures. Yeah, not really much going on here either. But look at this, right? Here's our finding support at the level that had previously been resistance. So resistance becomes support. All right, you're welcome. Anyone have any things that they would like me to look at in particular? Let me go back to the journal here and see what's going on. Boeing calls timeout on the Great American Outsourcing.
The other age issue, old voters are gaining power around the world. Maybe they're just tired of a bunch of shit being shoved down their throat and they're going to fix it. I mean, seriously, you've got people that probably haven't voted in 30 years that are coming out to vote now.
Well, old people always vote. Anyway.
You're welcome, guys.
Yeah, really not too much going on in the news here. It is kind of interesting, though. We'll have to see what this moron Powell says. But there's been a huge sell-off in the bond market over the last couple of days, which I think is pretty interesting. And then before I go, I just want to point out this is a really interesting thing. So here's the S&P 500, which we look at, right? And then here's the S&P 500 equally weighted ETF. And look at the difference. So this shows you that most stocks are actually going down. You just got these big ones that are kind of propping up the market. Yep. Microsoft, Apple. If they start to roll over, then the S&P is going to start to look something like this. But this is very telling. It just shows that the market's really, because of the way, it's important to understand that because of the way these benchmarks are constructed, sometimes there could be real weakness going on and you don't even know. Like in the end of 21, the equal weighted Qs peaked in the end of November. The regular Qs didn't peak until the end of December. So if you were watching the equally weighted Qs in November, you would have seen like, hey, this market's really kind of starting to fall apart here. So anyway, all right. Well, if no one has any questions, I guess we'll hit the road and we'll be back here tomorrow. And then Thursday is the 4th of July. So we won't be here. I like the 4th of July, man. Just something about booze and fireworks that just goes together really well.
Hand in hand, baby. Hand in hand. Guys, happy 4th of July. Enjoy your Independence Day. And I'm sure we'll see you here again tomorrow. I just threw that a little
Yeah,
early
we'll be
because
back tomorrow.
I'm a deep-rooted patriot. Have a wonderful day, guys, and enjoy the market.
All right, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow.